Good morning. Hey, can we give our band and our guest experience team a round of applause? Huge thanks for the way that they serve us every single week, help create an awesome environment here. Like Danielle said, my name is Jordan. I'm one of the pastors here. Just honored to be here with you today. If what you see from our volunteers every weekend, or maybe if you're here for the first time, what you see from that team, if you're like, man, I want to be a part of that, I'm glad you said that. This is the perfect time. We're actually in a place right now where we're trying to recruit some new people to be a part of serving at Heritage. We've seen a lot of growth happen. There's a lot of more growth that's about to happen that we're getting ready for. And as we anticipate at some point in the future transitioning back to 2 services, we know that we're going to need some more people to help us make that happen. So if you're sitting here with us in the auditorium, you'll see on some of the seats scattered throughout our space here, you'll be able to find some cards there. You can sign up. There's some specific areas there where we're looking for extra help, like guest experience, our kids team, our parking team. There's also a little blank at the end that says other. So if you're interested in being a part of any type of serving opportunity at Heritage, you can do that by just writing your information there. There's also a QR code on the back. You can scan that. That's going to take you straight to our website. If you're joining us online, you can actually access heritagechurch.cc/serve, and you can find all the different ways that you can volunteer and be a part of serving here at Heritage. We'd love it if you would do that. Hey, another thing I want to remind you about is 2 weeks from today, we're having a grand opening day, right? If you've been around here for a while, you know that Heritage has had an imprint on our area in our region for a long, long time. But with this new space that we're in, that we've just moved into about a month ago, we wanted to take an opportunity and invite our community to come and see, to come and be a part of all the good stuff that's happening here. And so, as a matter of fact, in a couple of days, some of you, maybe not all of you, but some of you are actually going to receive a postcard in the mail from Heritage. If you don't, many of, actually thousands of your neighbors are going to receive one. And it's inviting them to come and be a part of all the good things that are happening here, but especially our grand opening service that's happening 2 weeks from today on May the 5th. I hope that you're planning to be here. I hope you invite a friend, a neighbor, a family member. Maybe you've been meaning to invite them. That's the case sometimes, isn't it, right? We've been thinking, like, I know that I need to. But here, this is the perfect chance. It's going to be a really special day. We're going to have some special stuff in our service, some food afterwards. We're going to do a little ribbon cutting. We're going to do some fun stuff. You're going to want to be here for that day. We're also going to be giving out some stuff. I'll let you know more later. But you want to be here for that really special day. It's going to be really awesome. Well, I grew up, and maybe I've told you this before, but I grew up in Northwest Florida. So if you just look on a map of the continental United States and you draw a straight line 1,000 miles south of here, I grew up in Panama City, Florida, and grew up at the beach. That was a very normal thing for me and my family. And it wasn't until I left that I realized that it's actually abnormal to not live at the beach. I would go to school, especially in high school, and it wasn't unusual to pull into the parking lot and to see like somebody with a surfboard sticking out the back of their car. Or a lot of times there would actually be people with their boats would be connected to they took up 2 parking spaces because they brought their boat to school because after school they were going to go fishing or they were going to do something like that. And I did not realize that was weird until I moved away. We grew up on the water, literally. Like in our backyard was the bay, St. Andrew Bay. But we also grew up on the water, like all the time. We would go to the beach, and my family, we had a boat. We would go out on this boat, and matter of fact, my brother and I, just me and my brother and my parents, but we would go out on this boat. Sometimes we'd take our golden retriever dog with us, and we would go out to this specific place where there were always dolphins swimming, and my brother Jeremy and I would jump out of the boat, and we would swim with dolphins. We would actually hold onto the dorsal fin. They would actually pull us underwater. I thought all this was normal. Like, I thought that everybody did this. I've come to realize in Chicago, not a lot of dolphins, right? And so, but we did this growing up, and it was super fun, and the water and the beach was a really normal part of kind of our day-to-day. And I remember a lot of times, especially early in high school before I could drive, I wanted a little bit of freedom. So I talked to my parents into letting me take the kayak out every now and then. We had a couple kayaks that we would use for fishing and exploring in St. Andrew Bay. And I talked them in, maybe 9th, 10th grade, into letting me jump in the kayak and just go kayaking out in the bay a little bit. And behind our house, there was this body of water, and it was about 1.5 miles across the bay, and there was this island on the other side. And it was actually kind of a deserted island. I think it was owned by the Air Force, but it wasn't really occupied by anything, and it was just very rural and very, very woodsy. So I would paddle across the bay, and I would end up over there, and I would just stand on the seashore. I'd stand on the shore of the bay, and I would just look, and I would just breathe in the salt air, and I would listen to the sounds, and it was just far enough away that you couldn't really hear the sounds of like my neighborhood or the streets. It was just quiet and very, very peaceful. And I remember how much fun it was to just be there, to just kind of rest there. And then one particular occasion, I remember I got back in the kayak, and I was just kayaking back slowly, taking my time, because I knew when I was home, I was home. I had to do homework, or I had to do chores, or I had to do whatever I had to do. So I was really taking my time. I was just paddling in the kayak, and I was laying back. And it was not uncommon for me when I was kayaking to look out in the bay and to see a dolphin. You guys know what a dolphin looks like, right? This is what a dolphin looks like, in case you've forgotten, okay? Right? It's flipper, right? Dolphins, they're sweet, they're kind. Yeah, they're dolphins. This one particular occasion, though, I was laying back in the kayak, and I just had the paddle kind of resting on my chest, and I had my eyes closed, and I was just, again, just breathing in the salt air. So quiet, there wasn't any waves. It was just floating there. I was just taking my time, just enjoying the peaceful serenity of floating in a kayak in the bay behind my house. And then as soon as I opened my eyes, this is what I saw. Yeah, it didn't look just like that, but in my memory is this dolphin came and swam right up next to me, and he made eye contact with me, and I promise he looked just like Dolphin Man right there. You see, when you see a dolphin from a long way away, or like on you could take the photo off now, and it's disturbing people. Some of you you already know you're gonna have a nightmare about that tonight. Welcome to the last 30 years of my life, right? I can't get that picture out of my mind. You're just floating there, and you're just enjoying the peaceful serenity of the Gulf or of the bay or whatever you might be doing, and then you open your eyes, and there's that right there, right? And it scares you, and it interrupts your peace, and it really shakes you up. That's how I felt. And that's kind of how it is in life sometimes, right? Like maybe not literally that dolphin, hopefully not. I hope you never see that image in your entire life. But if you've ever been at a moment of peace in your life, you've probably been in a place where that peace got interrupted. Maybe you were breathing deep and enjoying something and enjoying a moment. You're like, man, everything feels right. It feels good in the world. It wasn't long before that peace was interrupted. Today we're going to talk about peace. And if you've been here the last couple weeks, you know that we're in week 3 of our series, Made for More. And Made for More is based off of something that we call the fruit of the Spirit. It comes out of Galatians 5. And this is what Galatians 5:22 through 25 says. Listen to this. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, also known as patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. And since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking, and envying each other. See, here's what I want to impact today. God is calling us toward freedom. To be peaceful, and really all of the different attributes that we just listed, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. That is living a life of freedom, to live by the Spirit. The last 2 weeks, Pastor Schuyler kicked off this series. We talked about love a couple weeks ago. Last week, we talked about joy. To live a life of love and to live a life where we feel joy and we're able to express joy appropriately to those around us and to our circumstances. And then today, as we talk about peace, we're able to live in a place of peace, and we're able to live in peace with people that we come in contact with. That is to live free in Christ. And so the question is this: how do free people act? Right? If God is calling us toward freedom, we have to ask that question: how do free people act? And that's what we're talking about in this series. So for you and for me, it might go like this: asking ourselves the question, does my freedom that I live in, does it lead me toward a life of indulgence, a life of immorality, a life of sin, or does it lead me closer to Christ? Well, if we look back in this passage, back to verse 13, we hear how Paul instructs us and begins this. He says, do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Don't just seal the deal of your salvation and become friends with Jesus and seal the deal of your salvation and then just live out your freedom in a terrible way. If you skip forward to verse 19, he starts listing off these things that we can tend to be drawn toward as we experience freedom. This is what it says. It says, you could be drawn toward sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, and the like. You see, as we live a life of Christ, we still have to deal with our sin. We still have to deal with the fact that we live in a sinful world, and we still live in a place where we're tempted to run toward things that are generally unhealthy for us. Those things, that list of things sound terrible, and the tough part is that I can find myself tempted toward every single one of those things each and every day. If you think that just because I'm standing here on the platform or because I'm on staff here, I'm a pastor, that I'm not tempted towards those things, you're wrong. As a matter of fact, the common denominator among every single one of us is that we all have sin as part of our story. We all have things that we've dealt with. And that's why our mission at Heritage Church is to help people find and follow Jesus, because Jesus is the only one that can save us from ourselves. And the reason I wanted to overview the early part of that passage, listing off all of those things, is to remind us of our tendency towards sinful behavior. Because when I look in the mirror at the behavior of my own life, I am most tempted to run toward wrong behavior when I'm least at peace with myself. I want you to hear that again. I'm most tempted to run toward sinful behavior, wrong behavior, when I'm least at peace with myself. Can you relate with that? There's probably been times in your life, I know there's been times in my life where I've found myself entangled in sin. I've found myself involved in something that I shouldn't be involved with. I've run toward things that I think are going to solve my problems when I know in reality they're not. Usually I can attribute that wrong behavior to a lack of peace. Usually I can attribute it to something that happened in my life, something that occurred, or maybe it's a crossroads that I've come to in life, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know where to go, and I don't know what to say. And so what I do to try to solve my problem, and this is ridiculous, but I do it all the time. What I try to do to solve my problem is I try to run to this long list of things that I'm tempted toward, things that are, as Paul says, of the flesh, right? He says at the beginning of Galatians 5, things of the flesh, sinfulness. And I think that by doing those things, I'm going to fill myself up, and I'm going to feel better, but it's simply not true. Have you ever heard the term medicator before? Maybe you have. If you've ever been in therapy, if you've ever gone to counseling, which I've done all of that before, you maybe have heard the word medicators. Medicators relieve the disease of the stress we experience in our lives. Medicator is an external solution for an internal unmet need. They show up in our lives in all kinds of areas. Sometimes medicators can be a person, a place, a thing, a situation, a behavior, a feeling. Sometimes it's a combination of all of the above. But if I had to assign a definition to medicators, this is what it would be. A medicator is anything we reach for in order to turn up a feeling we want more of, or to turn down a feeling we want less of. Medicators are not to be confused with helpful or needed medication. We know what that is. Instead, a medicator is something that we turn to when we're feeling disturbed, distressed, or are otherwise in need of a distraction. Right? For some of you, hear that definition, you're thinking about what are the things that we might run to, or that we might be drawn to or magnetized to whenever we're feeling unrest, whenever we're not feeling peace, we're feeling turmoil or hurt or pain or friction or challenge in our lives. What are those things that we tend to go to try to fix whatever's ailing us or try to fix whatever's distracting us? There's some really practical medicators, right, that I think a lot of us deal with. I know I can relate with some of these. Sometimes food can be a medicator, right? It's probably my favorite medicator. Of all the medicators that there are, food is a great medicator, right? Have you ever had a situation where you maybe said something like this, like, I deserve to have this cookie, right? I've said that plenty of times. Like, man, it has been a long day. I ate all of my vegetables. I deserve to have this cookie. Maybe it's drinking. I know drinking can be a medicator for a lot of people. Maybe you say, I'm just having this glass of wine to take the edge off, right? Right? It helps me sleep at night, helps me calm down, right? I'm just having this glass of wine to take the edge off. Sometimes even, this is a complicated one, but I know I've dealt with this before. Sometimes work can even be a medicator. I'm working this hard because they need me. I'm staying later, a little bit later every week. I'm staying a little bit later than I have to. Because there's something about my work, there's something about the performing that happens in my occupation and my job that fills me up. It helps to distract me. It's a medicator. It helps me not to think about the things that I really need to think about. Sometimes even, shopping. Have you ever thought about this? Shopping can even be a medicator. I have earned this retail therapy, right? I've earned it. And it makes me feel good to go shopping, right? Because I don't have to think about the things that maybe really matter and that really hurt and that really bring me pain. One of the things that is a medicator now that maybe wasn't a medicator 20 years ago, some of you know what I'm about to say, social media, right? So this afternoon, just like I do every Sunday afternoon, you can ask my wife and kids, I love a good nap, right? I'm never more tempted to take a nap than whenever I'm like in this place where, the dog is just barking, the kids are just being extra loud, right? And I got stuff I need to do, and I've got chores, and this is broken, I need to fix this, and I hear that whatever, somebody just rang the doorbell, and I'm like, I'm gonna go take a nap, right? I'm gonna go lay in bed and take a nap. That feels like a great idea, right? Have you ever done that before? But what's the best way to take a nap, right? You can't just lay your head down and go to sleep. First, you have to pick up your phone and look at social media, right? How else are you supposed to fall asleep without looking at your phone, right? Has this ever happened? Have you ever been in a situation where you're like about to take a nap and you lay down and you look at your phone and you pull out and you pull up in Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever your poison is, right? And you see a picture and you see that family, right? You know what I'm talking. There's that family. There's that family that you're aware of and that you follow, and you sort of envy them, but you also don't really like them, right? You know what I'm saying? And they see this perfect photo, and they're like, I have 3 kids, they have 3 kids, and they take this picture. They look perfect, right? And they're all looking at the how are all 3 kids looking directly at the camera, right? Like, kids aren't supposed to do that. Why won't my kids look at the camera, right? This family, they look perfect. Like, their hair is perfect, and they're all looking right at the camera. And then you look at the mom, and she's got like a Gucci beach bag, and you're like, I didn't even know they made Gucci beach bags, and like, how in the world, and she's holding it in the picture, right? And then you look at the dad and the husband, and he's got a Rolex on, and you're like, I don't even have a Rolex, much less would I ever take a Rolex to the beach, right? Well, on vacation, right? And then you look in the background, and there's this massive cruise ship, and you recognize it because you saw a news story the day before that said, this is the biggest ship ever made, and they're on that ship, and it's in the background, and then your eyes glance down to the caption, right? And the caption says, having a great time at Coco Cay, right? And day 12 of our 30-day around the world trip, right? And man, life is great, and we miss our family and friends, but we can't wait for the next 3 weeks for the rest of this trip, you know? And then there's like a hashtag at the end, maybe that says, make time for your family, you know? And you're looking at your phone, you're like, what in the world? What is my life? And then you hear your dog barking, and you hear your kids knocking on the door, and then the doorbell rings, and you remember 5 things that you need to do before you really should go to sleep and take a nap. Like that, social media can plague us. And if we're not careful, social media, right, can bring us a ton of unrest. But I reach for it all the time because it's a medicator. It's one of those things that makes me, for whatever reason, it feels like I need to check in, right? I need to see what's going on in the world. Maybe this is it for you. Maybe you are involved in some drama that's happening in somebody's life. Tell me this if this is you. Like, maybe you are friends on Facebook with somebody you went to high school with, but you didn't even hang out with them, but you've been friends with them on Facebook for 20 years, and you just secretly, nobody else in your life knows it, but you just secretly follow all their drama. And right now, you're actually like right in the middle. You know, at some point this afternoon, you're going to go check in on this post they made about this relationship, and there's all these comments, and there's all this drama, and you're following it. You would never like or comment, but you're following it, right? Because you're involved, right? and you're stressed out about it right now, right? We can get so involved in social media, and man, it just seems like it's gonna fix us and make us feel good and fill something up, but at the end of the day, man, it just brings us more and more stress. And we all have medicators, and although some don't seem so bad at first, they usually lead us down a path of destruction if we're not careful. And when we come up for air, we discover that we feel a bunch of things, but peace isn't one of them. So why do we do it? Why do we run to the things that seem like they might fix our problems when we actually have access to the one who certainly will? I think for a lot of us, it's fear. I know for me, it can be that sometimes. Fear to face our problems head on. To deal with the hard stuff means we have to lean out of our comfort zone, to face head on the things that we simply don't have control over. If I'm being honest, the reason that I go to the murky and shallow points of my life, my medicators, is because I'm afraid to face the things I'm not in control of. But let us be reminded today that we aren't talking about a God who is absent from our circumstances. We aren't talking about someone who's forgotten about us. We're talking about the God who created the heavens and the earth and everything in it, the one who knows you by name, the one who knows what your life looks like right now, the thing that you're carrying, the burden that you're walking through. Check this out in Psalm 34, verse 3, it says this: I sought the Lord, and he heard me. Some versions say, and he heard my cry, and he answered me, and he delivered me from all of my fears. Also this, in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 6, it says this: humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. You see, there's a few points of peace in our lives that I think that we're always fighting for. And I'll tell you what, when I'm saying this stuff, man, I'm preaching right to myself. There might as well be a mirror in front of me because these are all things that I navigate, it seems like every single day. And there's 4 in particular that I want to quickly just take us through, just maybe to help shift our focus on peace, shift our focus away from turmoil and difficulty and challenge and back toward the one who gives us peace. The first one is this: peace over our perspective. And we all have a perspective in life, and our perspective is everything. Just like my perspective of that dolphin fiasco, right? It skewed my perspective and took me away from a moment of peace. Oftentimes, our perspective of our circumstances causes us to go to a really unrestful place. Take just a moment and think, what are you anxious about right now? What about your current situation is plaguing you and causing you to worry, have anxiety and fear? Or maybe that temptation to take things into your own hands. Philippians 4, verse 6 and 7 says this: do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, that just means asking, with thanksgiving in our hearts, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. You want to be different in the world? And you want to appear different to the people that you do life with, the people you go to school with, the people you work with? Do some of that. Don't be anxious about anything, but in every situation, take it to God. And when you do that, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, is going to guard your hearts and your mind. The peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart. If you and I would just lean into that, if we would just lean into that invitation, we would quickly become unrecognizable to the people around us. And some people are actually going to look at your peaceful behavior and your peaceful life, and they're going to think something's wrong with you. Why are you so chill right now? It's the peace of God. Don't you know that things are falling apart everywhere, right? But yeah, it's the peace of God, man. Did you hear about XYZ? The peace of God. Have you seen the price of gas? The peace of God. Wait. How much is the price of gas right now, right? That one's a little tricky. I love this quote from C.S. Lewis. It says this: when the whole world is running toward a cliff, he who is running in the opposite direction appears to have lost his mind. Isn't that true? When you experience the overwhelming and overflowing peace that comes from God by casting our anxiety and our cares and our fears on him because he cares for us, you're going against the tide of the world. You're doing something that not everybody's doing. Here, it begs for this question, though. Are we just supposed to pretend like things aren't messed up and falling apart around us? Does it ever feel like that, where things are just falling apart? Of course not. Experiencing the peace of God is not about denial. Much the opposite, actually. When we experience the peace of God, we're placing our circumstances and our fear and our perspective, we're placing them in their proper place. Ephesians 6, verse 10 through 15 says this: "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you've done everything to stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, and the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace." You see, whenever we fit ourselves with what God has offered us and given us, what Ephesians calls the armor of God, we will be ready to withstand evil days. We're placing our circumstances and our perspective and our feelings and our thoughts and our fears in their rightful place, because from God we experience the fullness of peace. The second area is peace over our people, right? Peace over our perspective, and then peace over our people. There's no denying that a lot of unrest and anxiety can come when we start dealing with our people. Can I put it bluntly, right? People are the best and worst part of your life, aren't they? Right? Are they like the best? Like, when you think about the people in your life, they're the best thing that ever happened to you and the worst. It's like there's no middle. There's two groups of people in our lives that we have to deal with, right? And there's two groups of people that, if we're not careful, they can bring us unrest. They can take away our peace. For some of us, probably for all of us, there's a group of people in our lives that will consistently bring us unrest. They will consistently remove us from the peace that comes only from God. And the right decision for each of us is to dissociate ourselves with those people, is to separate ourselves, to end some relationships. And I know that sounds strong and maybe even countercultural, but for some of you, the best step toward peace today is to end some relationships. But what about those people in my life that I'm stuck with, right? What about people in your family or close friends that, man, you love them, but God, they just give me so much unrest, and they just make my life crazy. Romans 12, verse 9, starting verse 9, I think talks about this a little. It's kind of a long passage, but I want you to listen to this. This is what it says. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope and patient in affliction and faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. And if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And what's beautiful about that passage is it actually provides pretty detailed instructions for how we must approach most difficult situations with people in our lives. It doesn't mean that it's easy, that it's turnkey, but when you think about it, when we ask the question, what should my love look like to person, it should be sincere. That's what the passage says. What about when I'm facing affliction or a difficulty or a challenge with a relationship with someone that's close to me? What should I do? And the passage says, be patient and wait. What about when someone else's life looks just perfect, right? And mine is not. That comparison trap that we can get to. Rejoice with them is what Paul says. What about people who are a few steps behind me? Associate with them. Be connected to them. Be a person of peace. And for some of us, as we navigate the most difficult things in life, it's navigating our relationships with people. And for us, it might be going back to that passage and studying that and being reminded in Romans 12 what it looks like to conduct our relationships with other people. So peace over our perspective, peace over our people. The third is this, peace over our past. A lot of people in this room, me included, we have hang-ups over disappointment of our past. You and I, all of us, have made mistakes and missteps which caused a season of unrest, a season of hurt, but we've allowed the shame and disappointment of that season to mark our lives in a profound way. What's something that you never did or you failed at that caused you great shame and disappointment? We're not going to answer that out loud, but I know we all have them. There's real people in this room, right? There's real people in this room who can't come to grips with the fact that they didn't make the team, didn't get the job or the promotion, or couldn't make the relationship work, that they missed the opportunity. And that has actually caused us to be unable to move forward and to be able to unable to find peace and rest in our lives because of the shame that we carry as a result of that. To those of us who are dealing with that, right? Maybe perspective's not the thing for you. Maybe people is not the thing for you, but you just have some hang up with your past, with something that happened in the past. This is what I want us to be reminded about, to know that God cares deeply for our hearts. God has a plan for you, and it's better and more wonderful than anything you could ever imagine. And the hurdle that you and I have to get over when we're dealing with our past and unrest and peace from our past, we have to get over the hurdle in order to experience God's best for us in the future, is to surrender a past that's already happened and that we can't do anything about. For some of you, to have peace today, it just means letting go. It means forgiving yourself or forgiving someone else. Romans 8:28 says this. This is a reminder of God's love for us and his plan for us. It says, and we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Did you know that all things includes the days and moments that you've already lived? It's not just the future. We look at it that way a lot of times, but God has a purpose for your pain and for your past. There's a bunch of people who both love God and have been called according to his purpose, who cannot lean into what God has given them because we feel like we are discounted or disqualified because of something that occurred in our past. And this might sound harsh, but here's what that means in practical terms. Anytime I begin to think that I can derail God's plans because of anything I've done in my past or present, I'm telling God that I think I'm more powerful than he is. So if you have a hang up, if I have a hang up from something that happened in our past, something we did or something that was done to us, and we just can't get over it, and we think that that has caused God to remove his hand from us or to change his plan or to cast his gaze from us to someone else, does God even know that I'm here anymore? If we think that that's true, if I ever think that that's true, and there's plenty of times in my life where I have, I'm ultimately telling God, God, I'm more powerful than you. You're not powerful enough to forgive me and have grace and continue your plan and the work that you have in my life. Some of us need to find peace over our past in order to be at peace in our present and our future. Peace over our perspective, peace over our people, peace over our past. And the last one is this, peace over our place in life. As we begin to wrap up in just a few months, I want to lead us to consider our present. Where are we right now? What are we dealing with right now? What are we carrying right now? Who are we? And where are we in life? How are you feeling about you? Not thinking about other people, not thinking about things that were done to you or even things that you were. How are you feeling about you right now? If a lot of us are honest, we wanted to be a little further down the road than we are, right? You wanted to reach some of your financial goals a little sooner than you have. Maybe you want to be in a little better shape. You're hoping that at this point in your life, man, I just feel like I wish I was in better shape. Maybe you wish you had a better relationship with your kids or with your spouse or with a family member or with a friend. Maybe you wished you had a better job or you wish you'd gotten that promotion. Maybe things just don't feel right. And if you had to describe it, you would just say that you're not at peace. For many of us, to arrive at peace means to forgive ourselves for our past, let go of some of the disappointments of our relationships and goals, but also just to recognize that God is not finished with us yet. 2 Corinthians 12 says this, listen to this. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. We don't live in a society where it's popular to look at your weakness. Right? We just want to avoid it, don't we, so many times? We want to act like our weakness isn't there. We just want to focus on our strengths, right? Make your strengths stronger, and maybe your weakness will just go away. It's okay for us to recognize that we don't have it all together. It's okay for us to recognize that, man, we have a lot to work on. It's okay for us to look at our past and recognize that things didn't go like we wish they had, and to let go of that, to forgive ourselves for that. It's okay to look at our relationships with our people and say, man, they're not where they need to be or where I wish they were. Sometimes we just have to breathe deep and let go of those things. For some people in this room, your next step of obedience in life is your best step toward peace. Your next step of obedience is your best step toward peace. For some of you, man, you have been following God for a while. Maybe you've been coming to Heritage for a while. You've begun a relationship with Jesus, but you've never taken that step to be baptized. Outward obedience to an inward decision that you've made. And you've seen us do baptism services, and you've heard about them, and you see the slides and the social media posts and the email, e-newsletter and things like that. And you've said, I ought to do that at some point, right? And for some of you to make that bold statement in being baptized would be a step toward peace, because you would begin to go public and live out the faith that you have in Jesus. You would be making an announcement to your church and to the world that you are a follower of Jesus. And that would actually lead you toward peace. For some of you, it's just as practical. Danielle mentioned earlier about our welcome party. For some of you, you've been coming here kind of off and on for a while. And you know in your heart that you and your family need to come here regularly. You need to make this your home. You need to make it a priority to be here and to plug in to all that God is doing here, not just among other people, but in your life as well. You need to take a step and join Heritage or attend a welcome party to make church more than just an occasional appearance, but something that's a really big part of your life. And by doing that, you know that by coming here more often and being plugged in and being dialed in on the weekends and having your family here, you know that it would actually draw you closer to peace. And the best step for you is that step of obedience. Maybe it's joining a small group. It can be scary and intimidating, right? The first time you go is always a little weird. You're like, am I going to like these people? But you know that when we were talking earlier about relationships, that some of your relationships just aren't right. And you know that maybe the best step of obedience for you and maybe for your family would be to join with a group of people and start doing life with some people who are also seeking peace. And so joining a small group might be the best next step. For some of you, it might be giving, right? Maybe you got financial woes and challenges and things you're struggling with. But putting your money where the heart of God is, and to start making tithing and giving a regular part of your life. If you have questions about that, we'd love to talk to you about it. But those might be obedient steps towards peace. I don't want to paint an inaccurate picture that life gets perfect when we do these things. I wish it did. I wish it was like a formula, right? And we just do this and this and this and this, and you're going to experience peace. It's still going to be hard, but for a lot of us, finding peace over our perspective and over our people and over our past and over our place in life starts with giving some of these things over to God that we've been keeping for ourselves. You see, taking a next step is not going to make your life perfect, but it might begin to make more right the things that have been going most wrong. For you to surrender your relationships in your past, in your present, it's not going to make life perfect, but it might begin to make more right the things that have been going most wrong. I want us to respond in kind of a unique way today. See, my life, man, a lot of people think that as pastors that we just sit in the office and read the Bible all day. I wish it looked like that. It doesn't really. There's actually a lot of moments in my life where I'm trying to find peace. Like I'm trying to find a few minutes to just rest in the quiet. A lot of times for me, it's riding in the car, like on the way to the office, or if I'm going somewhere. I won't even turn music on. I love music, but I'll just keep it quiet, and I'll just sort of just be still and be quiet. My wife and I have 3 kids at home, 5, 10, and 13, so it's loud a lot of the time. We also have a golden retriever, you know? And so things are loud, the dog's barking, kids are asking for things, and that's okay, that's life right now. But it's rarely like just super peaceful. So sometimes I have to really dig and find moments of peace. So I wanted to invite us now, in just a moment, to take a moment to find some peace. Maybe to think about our perspective on life, to think about our past, to think about our people and our relationships, to think about where we are right now and where we're headed, and what a step of obedience might look like for each and every one of us, to find some rest and some peace. So I'm going to invite our musicians to come out, and they're gonna lead a song for you. And the words are going to be on the screen. You can read them. I want you to receive this. I don't want you to sing along. I want you to just be quiet and still and find some peace in this moment. Okay? Let's check this out. first pastors that I ever worked for years and years and years ago. His name was Dr. Phil Jett, and he's actually passed away in the last year, but he said something really profound, simple, profound, that I'll never forget. And he said this, he said, you're always either in a storm, you're coming out of a storm, or you're going into a storm. That's just sort of what the Christian life feels like. That's what life feels like in general, but it's true for those of us who love and follow Jesus as well. If you're not in a storm, at some point you're gonna be in a storm. As some of you walked in today in this message and these ideas and these thoughts, man, they resonated with you because you need peace right now. For some of you, maybe not so much. You can understand it because you have the perspective of having been at unrest and at lack of peace at some point in your life. But for all of us, we're not exempt from the pain and the hardship and the difficulty of life that's coming for all of us at some point as we deal with people and perspective, as our past creeps back up, as we start to become uneasy and unrest with the things that we're dealing with right now in our present, in our place in this world. The invitation today is really simple. Cast your cares on Jesus, on God, for he cares for you. Cast your cares on God, for he cares for you. For many of us this week, the one thing that we could put into practice is to not rush around so much, but to slow down just a little bit. One of my favorite books I've read in the last couple years by a guy named John Mark Comer. He wrote a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's one of those books that, apart from, other than the Bible, right, which I would recommend for all of you, I would recommend The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's a great book. It's super practical. I try to read it at least once a year. And every time I do, it reminds me of how much I just need to slow down. Stop rushing around so much. One of the quotes that John shares in his book, it says this: love, joy, and peace are at the heart of all Jesus is trying to grow in the soil of your life. And all three are incompatible with hurry. Love, joy, and peace are at the heart of all that Jesus is trying to grow in the soil of your life. And every single one of those are incompatible with hurry. So if you're not sure what your next step is, right? If we're ever at a point where we're like, I don't know what the next thing I should do, probably the best next step for you and for me is to just slow down and to recognize that whether it's the unrest that we're experiencing now or the unrest that's probably around the corner, Jesus is with us. He's for us. He cares for us. And if God is for us, then no one can be against us. Hey, thanks for being a part of our gathering today. Let me pray for us and then we'll be dismissed. God, we love you. We're so thankful for you. And we know, Father, that life's going to give us painful moments. We know that if we're experiencing unrest right now, God, that you're with us, that you know where we're at, you know our circumstances, you know our name, you know what time it is, you know what we're dealing with, you know what's happening tomorrow, what happened yesterday, you know what happens next week, you know all of it, and you're with us through all of it. And you invite us to cast our cares on you because you love us and you care for us and you know us and you're with us and you're for us. God, every single one of us deal with the hardship of the world. We all deal with pain. Remind us, God, at those painful points and those moments in life that you're with us, that you love us, and that you've provided this family here for us to encourage us, to help remind us that you're all we need. Thank you for the peace that you give, which passes all understanding. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you back here next week.